Dad, Sarah, and I have been talking. My son James stood in our living room, his girlfriend nodding supportively beside him. We think it's time for you to find your own place. I looked up from my newspaper, certain I'd misheard. My own place? Yeah, I'm 23 now, Sarah's moving in, and we're both working adults. We can handle a house ourselves. I glanced around the home I'd owned for 20 years, the one I'd maintained through a divorce, raised my son in, and paid off through countless overtime shifts at the construction company I now managed. Let me understand this correctly, I said carefully. You want me to leave my house? Well, technically, it's been our house since Mom left, James replied with the confidence of someone who'd never checked property records. And we're responsible adults now. We don't need you hovering anymore. Sarah, his girlfriend of 8 months, chimed in. We've already planned how we'll arrange everything once your stuff is gone. The spare room would make a perfect gaming setup. I set down my paper and studied them both. James, my only child, had moved back home after college, landing an entry-level aide job. Sarah had recently graduated and worked as a social media coordinator. They'd been dating since meeting at a friend's party. And you thought this through completely? I asked. Absolutely, James assured me. We've got steady jobs, we're adults, and it's time for you to let go. I nodded slowly. All right then. They both blinked, clearly not expecting such easy agreement. Really? Sarah asked. Really. But since we're all adults here, let's handle this like adults. I'll move out next weekend. Next weekend? James seemed startled by the quick timeline. Of course. You're ready to handle everything, right? So I'll take my belongings and move to that condo I've been considering downtown. Your belongings? Sarah questioned. Yes. The furniture I bought, my appliances, my tools. You're adults. You'll want to furnish your home your way. James shifted uncomfortably. We thought maybe you'd leave the furniture. The furniture I paid for? That wouldn't be very adult of me, would it? Adults buy their own things. I smiled pleasantly. I'll also remove my name from all the utilities, insurance, and property tax responsibilities. As adults, you'll want those in your names. The confidence began seeping from their expressions. Property tax. Sarah whispered to James. And since you're taking over my house, I continued, I'll need the fair market value. The realtor estimates it at $425,000. I'd assume you saved for a down payment. James's face paled. Down payment. Of course. Adults don't expect free houses, do they? You'll need to qualify for a mortgage. Your combined income should cover it, though the property taxes are quite high in this neighborhood. Silence filled the room as reality began to dawn. Maybe we should discuss this more, James said weakly. Why? You're adults, you've thought everything through, and you want me gone. I'm simply agreeing and ensuring everything is handled properly. I picked up my paper again. I'll start packing tomorrow. The next week was enlightening for everyone involved. I began systematically packing my belongings, making lists of everything that would need to be transferred to their names, and calculating the exact costs of running the household. James found me in the garage, cataloging my tools. Dad, about the house thing. Yes, I've got the mortgage broker's number ready for you. Though with current interest rates, your monthly payment would be around $2,800, not including taxes and insurance. He swallowed hard. That's more than we both make. Really? But you said you were ready to handle everything as adults. The reality check continued as I prepared to leave. I disconnected my premium cable package, removed my name from utilities, and canceled the lawn service I'd been paying for. The water heater's making a strange noise, Sarah mentioned nervously one evening. Probably needs replacing soon. That's about $1,200 with installation. But as adults, you'll handle that just fine. The day before my planned departure, I laid out all the monthly expenses on the kitchen table. Mortgage, $2,800. Property tax, $750/month. Insurance, $200/month. Utilities, average, $400/month. Internet/cable, $150/month. Home maintenance fund, $300/month. Lawn care, $200/month. This doesn't even include groceries, car payments, or emergency repairs. I noted as they stared at the numbers. But you've surely budgeted for all this. James looked like he might be sick. Dad? Yes. We may have spoken. Hastily. Oh. Sarah jumped in. We didn't realize how much goes into running a house. Really? But you're adults who don't need me hovering anymore. Surely you understood all this before asking me to leave my home. They exchanged glances filled with dawning comprehension. Could we, maybe, revise our request? James asked quietly. I leaned back in my chair. I'm listening. We were being stupid, he admitted. We saw our friends getting places together and thought we were falling behind. But we had no idea what it really takes to maintain a home. Or how much you actually do around here, Sarah added. The mortgage alone would bankrupt us. Not to mention the property isn't actually yours to take over, I pointed out. I've got 20 years of equity and memories in these walls. James looked ashamed. I know. I don't know why I thought. I'm sorry, Dad. Really sorry. Being an adult isn't just about age or having a job, I said softly. It's about understanding responsibility, respecting others' property and effort, and making informed decisions. We definitely learned that lesson, Sarah murmured. So what now? I asked. James straightened up. Now we act like actual adults. If Sarah and I want to live together, we should save up and find our own place, one we can actually afford. And in the meantime? I prompted. In the meantime, if you're willing to let us stay here, we'll pay proper rent and start learning from you about home ownership and responsibility. No more entitled demands. I nodded slowly. That sounds more like adult thinking. Could you also maybe not move out? James asked hesitantly. I suppose I could be convinced to stay if we're all clear on boundaries and expectations. The relief on their faces was palpable. Over dinner that night, we drafted a proper rental agreement. They would pay reasonable rent, contribute to utilities, and take on specific household responsibilities. More importantly, we established clear boundaries and communication guidelines. One more thing, I added. Every Sunday, I'll teach you both something about home maintenance or financial management. Real adult education. They agreed eagerly, their earlier bravado replaced by a genuine desire to learn. That weekend, instead of moving out, I taught them how to check the water heater, change HVAC filters, and practice basic budgeting principles. Their attention and questions showed a new appreciation for what being grown up truly meant. Dad, James caught me in the hallway later. I'm really sorry about before. I was being young, overconfident, normal for your age. He smiled slightly. All of that. Thanks for teaching us instead of just letting us fail. That's what parents do, son. Even when their adult children think they don't need them anymore. Sarah joined us, looking thoughtful. My parents just gave me everything and never taught me how anything worked. This is different, better. The following months brought significant changes. James and Sarah learned about home maintenance, budgeting, and real-world responsibilities. They started saving for their own place, a more modest goal now that they understood true costs. Most importantly, our relationship evolved. No longer was I the hovering parent they wanted to escape, but a mentor helping them transition into genuine adulthood. One evening, reviewing their savings progress, James looked up suddenly. You know what I realize now? he asked. What's that? Being an adult isn't about pushing away support. It's about learning to appreciate and build upon it. I smiled, remembering my own similar revelations at his age. The transition from entitled young adults to responsible household members didn't happen overnight. There were growing pains, learning curves, and moments that tested everyone's patience. But with each passing week, I watched James and Sarah evolve in their understanding of what real independence meant. The first reality check came when their car needed major repairs. $4,000. James stared at the mechanic's estimate in disbelief. But we've been saving that for our apartment fund. Welcome to adult life, I said, watching their faces fall. Sometimes you save for one thing, and life has other plans. What would you do? Sarah asked, her new humility showing through. Well, first I'd get a second opinion. Then I'd look at what parts we could source ourselves to save labor costs. I know a thing or two about cars. Their eyes lit up hopefully. Could you teach us? James ventured. That weekend found us in the garage, tools spread out as I showed them basic car maintenance. If you'd learned this earlier, you might have caught the issue before it became major, I explained, demonstrating how to check fluid levels. Why didn't I pay attention when you tried to show me this stuff in high school? James wondered aloud. Because you were 16 and knew everything. I replied with a smile. Some lessons we have to be ready to learn. The next test came when Sarah lost her job due to company downsizing. Their dream of moving out suddenly seemed even further away. I feel like such a failure, she confessed one evening, sitting in the kitchen. Here we were, acting like we could handle a whole house, and I can't even keep a steady job. Job loss happens to everyone at some point, I said, pulling out my laptop. The adult part isn't about never failing. It's about how you handle it. Let's update your resume. For the next few weeks, I helped Sarah refine her job search strategy while she took on more household responsibilities to contribute in other ways. She learned to cook to save on takeout costs, discovered she had a knack for minor home repairs, and started a small social media consulting side business. You know what's weird? She said one day while we fixed a leaky faucet together. 2 months ago, I thought being an adult meant not needing help. Now I realize it's about learning from people who know more than you. James, meanwhile, was showing his own growth. He started tracking household expenses meticulously, often consulting me about financial decisions before making them. Dad, I found this investment app, he said one morning. But I wanted to get your take before putting money into it. That's actually really adult of you, I noted. Want to learn about traditional investment options too. Our Sunday lessons expanded beyond home maintenance into financial literacy, career development, and long-term planning. They absorbed everything eagerly, their earlier resistance replaced by genuine curiosity. The real breakthrough came during a plumbing emergency. At 2 a.m., a pipe burst in the upstairs bathroom. Instead of panicking or immediately calling an expensive emergency plumber, they remembered what I'd taught them about the water main and basic pipe repair. I woke to the sound of them working together, following the emergency procedures I'd shown them. By the time I got upstairs, they had already shut off the water and were implementing temporary fixes to prevent damage. We remembered where you keep the pipe repair kit, James said proudly. And we took pictures for insurance documentation, Sarah added. I couldn't help but smile. Now that's adult problem solving. The next morning, over coffee, James brought up something unexpected. Dad, remember when we demanded you leave your own house? Vaguely, I teased. We were so focused on proving we were adults that we were acting like children. Real adults build on the foundation others provide. They don't try to kick it away. Sarah nodded. My parents keep asking when we're moving out, saying they moved out at our age. But they don't mention that they had family money and no student loans. Every generation faces different challenges, I acknowledged. The adult thing is to face them realistically, not compare yourself to others. Their maturity showed in other ways too. They started contributing more than their agreed-upon rent, insisting on paying their fair share of utilities. They took initiative with house maintenance, often completing tasks before I even mentioned them. One evening, I overheard Sarah on the phone with her mother. "No, Mom, we're not moving out yet. We're learning valuable skills and saving responsibly. That's more adult than rushing into something we can't afford." Later that week, James proposed a family meeting. "Sarah and I have been talking," he began, but this time his tone was different from that entitled demand months ago. "We want to revise our long-term plan." "I'm listening." "Instead of rushing to move out, we'd like to stay longer, but with a purpose. We want to learn everything we can about homeownership, save aggressively, and do things right." Sarah pulled out a detailed spreadsheet. "We've calculated that with our current savings rate and what we're learning from you, we could be ready for our own place in 18 months. A realistic place, not some fantasy we can't afford." I studied their careful planning, so different from their earlier impulsive demands. "Now that," I said, "is what real adult decision-making looks like." The pride in their faces showed how far they'd come from thinking adulthood was simply about age and independence. They'd learned that true maturity meant making informed decisions, accepting guidance, and building on the wisdom of others. Besides, James added with a grin, "Who else is going to teach us how to handle a furnace replacement when that time comes?" "Speaking of which," I replied, "this weekend we're learning about HVAC systems." Their eager nods confirmed just how much things had changed. They'd gone from wanting to push me out to actively seeking knowledge, from demanding independence to understanding interdependence. And that, perhaps, was the most adult transformation of all. As winter approached, bringing with it higher utility bills and new household challenges, James and Sarah's maturity continued to show in unexpected ways. What really surprised me was when they initiated a family budget meeting one Sunday evening. "We've been tracking expenses," Sarah began, opening her laptop. "And we think we found ways to reduce our collective costs while still saving for our future place." James pulled out a detailed spreadsheet. "We've also researched some energy-efficient upgrades that could save money long-term. The initial investment is high, but the returns look promising." I leaned back, impressed. This was a far cry from the couple who, just months ago, thought running a household was simply about paying rent and buying groceries. "Show me what you found," I said. Their presentation was thorough, comparing current utility costs with projected savings after upgrades, factoring in installation costs, and even including tax incentives for energy-efficient improvements. "The new water heater would pay for itself in under 3 years," James explained. "We'd like to contribute to the upgrade costs. It's only fair since we're benefiting from living here. And we found a contractor who offers financing," Sarah added quickly, "but we wanted your advice before making any decisions." This moment highlighted just how far they'd come, from demanding control to seeking collaboration, from impulsive choices to careful planning. Their growth was tested when Sarah's parents visited for dinner. Her father, a successful business owner who had never faced financial struggles, brought up their living situation. "Still living with your father, James?" he asked, his tone carrying a hint of judgment. "When I was your age, I'd already bought my first house." Before I could intervene, James responded with unexpected poise. "Yes, and we're grateful for the opportunity to learn from someone who's successfully managed a home for decades. The housing market is different now, and we're choosing to be strategic rather than rushed." Sarah added, "We're building a solid financial foundation and learning valuable skills. That seems more adult than taking on more than we can handle just to prove a point." Her father looked taken aback, clearly not expecting such a measured response. Later that evening, after her parents left, Sarah broke down. "They don't understand," she said, frustrated. "They think we're being lazy or dependent, but we're actually being more responsible than we've ever been." "You know what's really adult?" I offered. understanding that other people's opinions matter less than making smart decisions for your own life. The next challenge came when James received a job offer with higher pay, but it would require him to travel frequently. 3 years ago, I would have jumped at this without thinking, he admitted during our discussion. But now I understand there's more to consider than just salary. We sat down together and analyzed the true costs and benefits. Higher income, but increased expenses, career growth, but less stability for their future housing plans, professional opportunities, but potential strain on their relationship. "What do you think, Dad?" he asked after they'd laid out all the factors. "I think you're asking the right questions," I replied. "That's more important than what I think about the job itself." They spent a week weighing their options, making pros and cons lists, and discussing their long-term goals. Finally, James declined the offer, negotiating instead for additional responsibilities and a modest raise at his current position. "The stability and ability to keep learning and saving is worth more right now," he explained. "There will be other opportunities when we're better positioned." Their maturity showed in smaller ways too. They started a house maintenance calendar, scheduling regular checks of all major systems. They researched and implemented better recycling practices to reduce our waste costs. They even started a small vegetable garden to cut grocery expenses. One evening, I found them in the garage, organizing tools and creating a detailed inventory. "We thought it would be helpful to know where everything is and what might need replacing," Sarah explained. "Plus, we should learn what all these tools are for before we have our own place. Remember when we thought we could just figure everything out on our own?" James laughed. "We didn't even know what half these tools were for." The real test came when they hit their first major savings milestone. Instead of immediately starting to house hunt, they scheduled a meeting with a financial advisor I recommended. "We want to make sure we're not missing anything in our planning," Sarah explained. "Better to ask questions now than make expensive mistakes later." The advisor was impressed with their preparation and realistic approach. She helped them refine their savings strategy and suggested additional steps they hadn't considered. "You've got a solid foundation here," she told them. I wish more young couples took this kind of measured approach to homeownership. As spring arrived, bringing with it the 1-year anniversary of when they almost demanded I leave, they suggested a family dinner to celebrate, but not for the reason I expected. "We're celebrating learning what real adulthood means," James explained. "Not just independence, but interdependence. Not just rights, but responsibilities." Sarah raised her glass, to the best life lesson we never knew we needed. I looked at these two young adults, so different from the entitled couple who had confronted me a year ago, and felt profound pride in their growth. "You know," I said, "true adulthood isn't a destination you reach on your birthday or when you get your first job. It's a continuous journey of learning, adapting, and growing." And sometimes, James added with a smile, "it's about realizing you don't know as much as you thought you did." But that's okay, Sarah concluded, because being adult enough to admit that is probably the most grown-up thing we've learned. The 2-year mark since their initial demand brought unexpected news. Sarah received a significant promotion, while James's side coding projects had grown into a promising startup opportunity. Their savings had exceeded their initial goals, and their understanding of homeownership had matured beyond recognition. One evening, they called a family meeting, echoing that night from 2 years ago, but with a completely different energy. "Dad," James began, his tone thoughtful rather than demanding, "we think we're ready to start looking for our own place. Really ready this time. We've done our research," Sarah added, pulling out a detailed presentation. "We've found a modest townhouse development that fits our budget, including maintenance costs and HOA fees." I looked through their materials, comprehensive financial projections, maintenance schedules, emergency fund calculations, and even a detailed comparison of different mortgage options. "You've certainly done your homework," I noted. "We learned from the best," James smiled. "Remember when we thought running a household was just paying bills and keeping the lights on?" The irony wasn't lost on any of us. 2 years ago, they demanded control of my house without understanding the first thing about managing it. Now, they were making a careful, informed decision to begin their own homeownership journey. "There's something else," Sarah said softly. "We'd like you to help us through the buying process. Not financially," she quickly added, "but with your experience. We've learned that having a mentor doesn't make us less adult. It makes us smarter adults." Over the next few months, I watched them navigate the home buying process with patience and wisdom I wouldn't have thought possible 2 years ago. They didn't jump at the first property they saw, instead methodically evaluating each option against their carefully crafted criteria. When they finally found the one, they approached the purchase with the same measured attitude they developed living under my roof. The inspection revealed some issues, James told me one evening. 2 years ago, we probably would have ignored them just to get the house. Now you know better, I finished. They negotiated repairs, got multiple contractor quotes, and weren't afraid to walk away if things didn't add up. When they finally closed on their townhouse, it was with complete confidence in their decision. The day they moved out was bittersweet. As we loaded the last box into their moving truck, James turned to me. "You know, when we demanded you leave your house 2 years ago, we thought we were proving our adulthood. Turns out, we were proving how much growing up we still had to do." Sarah joined us, keys to their new place jingling in her hand. "The funny thing is, now that we're actually ready to manage our own home, we understand the value of staying connected and learning from each other. That's why," James added, "we're hoping you'll still come over for our Sunday maintenance lessons. Just because we have our own place doesn't mean we don't need your wisdom." I smiled, remembering their journey from entitled demands to earned independence. "I'd like that." As they drove away to their new home, I realized that sometimes the best parenting moments come not from forcing lessons, but from allowing natural consequences to teach them, while still being there to guide and support the learning process. That evening, I received a text from them. "Just finished setting up our maintenance calendar and emergency contact list. First item on the agenda: learning how to properly maintain our new HVAC system. Sunday lesson still on." I texted back, "Wouldn't miss it. Proud of you both." Because sometimes the greatest measure of adulthood isn't in declaring independence, but in recognizing the value of continued growth and learning together.